Trial resumed. Jury not present.
The court said, "Good morning. Would you make your appearances, please?"
Mr. Horton said, "Good morning, Your Honor. Justin Horton, Ryan Finkel and Juliana Murray for the government. We're joined by paralegal Isabel Loftus and agent Robert Stout from the FBI."
The law clerk said, "Defense counsel is not here."
The court said, "Please be seated. We'll wait for them."
Mr. Skirek said, "Apologies, Your Honor."
The court said, "Make your appearances, please."
Mr. Skirek said, "Good morning, Your Honor. Scott Skirek and Matt Barkin on behalf of defendant Mr. Gov't. Together at counsel table with Mr. Gov't."
The court said, "You may be seated. Is there anything you'd like to raise before we go back to the witness testimony?"
Mr. Finkel said, "Just one thing, Your Honor, and this would affect either the second or the third witness today, who's a victim that was also a follower of the defendant, and worked quite extensively with the defendant. This was a subject of some briefing before Your Honor in motion in limine. That witness. She knows that the defendant is incarcerated, and communicated through his agents while he was incarcerated. We have instructed that witness consistent with Your Honor's ruling not to mention that he's incarcerated. Obviously, we don't tell the witnesses what to say, but to follow the court's ruling, we instructed her as that. Just want to put that on the record."
Mr. Skirek said, "Your Honor, one housekeeping matter I neglected to mention that Mr. Kamraju and Ms. Shroff are also here. Just not at counsel's table at the moment, but they will be here shortly."
The court said, "We'll resume then at 9:29. Please have the witness on the stand."
Recess. Continued on next page. Jury not present.
The court said, "Please be seated. I'm now going to have the interpreters sworn."
Interpreters sworn.
The court said, "On my left, if you would please state your name."
The interpreter said, "Zio Parker."
The court said, "Would you describe your educational background?"
The interpreter said, "I graduated from China. I possess my bachelor's degree, and I came to New York City 10 years ago. I went to NYU University, finished my ESL advanced program. Currently, I'm working with the Federal Immigration Court. I'm certified by the Federal Immigration Court as Mandarin interpreter."
The court said, "So you speak English and Mandarin both fluently?"
The interpreter said, "Yes."
The court said, "Sir, would you describe your educational background?"
The interpreter said, "I have master's degree from Indiana University. And I've been practicing translation and interpretation in New York area for more than 20 years. I'm certified by state of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. I go to federal court and state court."
The court said, "And your name, sir?"
The interpreter said, "Lian Wang."
The court said, "And you're fluent both in Mandarin and English, correct?"
The interpreter said, "Correct."
The court said, "All right. Thank you. Please have the jurors brought in."
Continued on next page. Jury present.
The court said, "Please be seated. Good morning, jurors. Welcome back. I had you brought in at 9:33 because we've been having some difficulty with our audio-visual system, and it is mostly fixed, and so that was the delay of a few minutes. Would you continue with the examination of the witness?"
Jenny L.I., previously sworn, testified as follows. Cross-examination continued. By Mr. Skirek.
"Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Lee, thank you for coming back this morning. Do you recall yesterday that you testified to having met with representatives of the government on approximately 8 occasions before trial?"
The court said, "It appears that we're also having difficulty with this microphone on the left. They're working on it now. So we'll wait."
Pause.
The court said, "I was just told that there were power surges yesterday that have interfered with the equipment, so hopefully we've got the right fix. You may continue."
Mr. Skirek said, "Thank you, Your Honor. May I ask whether the court reporter was able to take down the question?"
Record was read.
The court said, "I think the best thing to do at this point is to take a break, and we can get the whole team in and working on these machines. So remember not to discuss the case amongst yourselves. All of the same warnings apply that I've been giving you."
Jury not present. Jury not present.
The court said, I'm told that the podium microphone also failed, so that's why we need to get the whole system revamped.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, I believe counsel table's mic is working. Perhaps we could use that mic.
The court said, You mean to extend it over to the podium?
Mr. Finkel said, or to question from the table. He could stand and question from the table.
The court said, How does the defense feel about that?
Mr. Skirek said, To be perfectly honest, Your Honor, I much prefer to be at the podium.
The court said, Understood. Very well. We're going to get these microphones fixed. You may step down.
Recess.
The court said, Please be seated. Please have the jurors brought back in.
Jury present.
The court said, Please be seated. You may continue.
Mr. Skirek said, Thank you, Your Honor.
By Mr. Skirek.
Ms. Lee. Do you recall testifying yesterday that you met with representatives of the government on approximately 8 occasions before trial?
Yes, I saw him yesterday.
The court said, I want you to use the microphone when you're speaking in Mandarin as well as English. I'm saying that to the interpreter. Go ahead.
What do you mean by you saw him yesterday?
That's the question you asked me.
Ma'am, my question was, do you recall testifying that you met with representatives? Various representatives of the government on approximately 8 occasions before trial.
Yes, I did.
And some of those meetings were by phone, correct?
No.
Some of those meetings were virtual meetings, correct?
Virtual video.
Fair enough. Like Zoom, correct?
I don't know about Zoom.
Okay. But virtual meetings by video, whatever the tool was, right?
Yes.
And some of those meetings were in person, correct?
Mr. Horton said, Objection, Your Honor. We covered this yesterday at length.
The court said, You may answer.
Yes.
And do you remember speaking to representatives of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission?
No.
And you spoke to members of the Department of Homeland Security, correct?
I saw somebody, but I'm not sure which department they came from.
Do you recall an interview that you gave in July of 2023, virtually? To agents of the Homeland Security investigation?
No, I didn't.
You don't recall?
I remember it was sometime in June.
So you recall the meeting, just you believe that the timing was in June of 2023, correct?
The court said, Is there an answer?
The interpreter said, Let me wait. Can I have the question again?
Mr. Skirek said, I believe there was an answer. If the court permits, we can read back the question and answer.
The court said, My recollection is that she said let me wait.
Mr. Skirek said, I thought that came after the answer, Your Honor. I could be wrong.
The court said, If the reporter would please read back the question and answer.
Record was read.
The court said, I'd like you to step up, please, counsel.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, I'd like to suggest, of course you do not have to take this suggestion, that you use simpler words. So instead of saying, Do you recall testifying yesterday, do you remember that in court yesterday you said?
Mr. Skirek said, I will do my best, Your Honor.
The court said, Thank you.
Continued on next page. In open court. By Mr. Skirek.
Let me try a little differently. Do you remember speaking with members of the Homeland Security Department in June of 2023?
No.
When do you believe you spoke to members of the Homeland Security Investigations Group?
June 2022.
Okay. Thank you. Do you recall or do you remember meeting with Mr. Horton from the government in April of 2023?
I don't recall the exact date.
Do you recall that it was in the spring of 2023?
Nope.
When do you think it was?
This year, 2024.
Do you recall meeting with Mr. Horton in May of 2024?
I believe I had 3 video contacts with somebody from government, but I don't recall the date.
Were those video contacts with the government in the spring of this year?
Yes.
Now, before we broke yesterday, I believe you were talking about some protests that you participated in. Do you recall that?
I do.
Am I right that in September of 2020, you participated in a protest in Los Angeles?
It was August 29, 2020.
Did it stretch into September of 2020?
No, August 29.
And the protests took place outside the Chinese consulate in Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
And the protests were of China's treatment of Hong Kong protesters during COVID, correct?
Can I have the question again?
You were protesting China's treatment of Hong Kong's protesters, correct?
Yes.
And the Himalaya Farms organized that protest, right?
The interpreter said, "Can the interpreter have that question again, interpreter?"
The court said, repeat the question.
The Himalaya Farms organized that protest, right?
Can I have the interpreter interpret the question again?
The interpreter said, "From the interpreter, I did not get which organization." The interpreter did not get that.
Mr. Skirik said, it's called the Himalaya Farms.
Gwawangwe, cause the farms in the grassroots level, to participate actively.
Was Mr. Guo in LA for that protest?
He was not in Los Angeles. He was in his hotel.
Who was organizing in Los Angeles?
We responded to calls from Gwawangwe.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, move to strike as non-responsive.
The court said yes. The answer is stricken.
What person in Los Angeles, physically present in Los Angeles, was directing the protest?
Gwawangwe, at the top level, was giving instructions. On the lower level it was a huge organization. There was a person, Wei Lihong, belonged to the lower level.
Is that Sarah Wei?
Yes.
Was there someone named Michelle Peng in Los Angeles?
Her Chinese name is Feng Qingpeng.
The interpreter said, "Interpreter will spell as FENG, QING, PENG."
Mr. Skirik said, Can I ask the interpreter to please hold the microphone to his mouth? Michelle Peng is the same person that you just identified by their Mandarin name, is that correct?
There was somebody else.
Are you familiar with a person referred to as Michelle Peng?
Yes, I am.
And what is that person's Cantonese name or Mandarin name?
Feng Qingpeng.
The interpreter said, "I will spell FENG, QUING, last name PENG."
Okay. Going forward I'm going to refer to that person as Michelle Peng, okay?
I don't know what's her real name. They've been using their net names. Her net name was Wenlei.
Whether it's that name or the other name. Going forward, do you understand that I will refer to that person in my questioning as Michelle Peng?
Okay.
Thank you. Was Michelle Peng an organizer at the Phoenix Farm?
I would say she was an assistant of Wei Lihong.
And can we agree that going forward in my questioning I will refer to Wei Lihong as Sarah Wei?
Okay.
So Michelle Peng worked for Sarah Wei, correct?
Yes.
And you became suspicious, withdrawn. Do you recall that you became suspicious of Michelle Peng during the trip to LA?
Yes.
And that was because she was secretly taking pictures of demonstrators in LA, correct?
It was not her.
Why did you become suspicious of Michelle Peng during the LA trip?
For events that were experienced that I saw.
Can you please explain that further?
I mean, something happened during the demonstration.
And what was that?
Somebody told others that when they face the consulate, they should take off their mask for the purpose of taking pictures.
And was that Ms. Peng who said that?
I was not talking about Ms. Peng. I mean, somebody else were taking photos secretly.
Were you able to identify the person who was taking photos secretly?
Yes, I can. Even though the person was having the mask on, I could still identify him.
And was that person there as part of the protest?
No.
Who was the one who told protesters to take their mask off when they faced the consulate?
The person who took the photos.
Now, you testified before that you became suspicious of Michelle Peng, correct?
Yes.
And why was that?
She was leading the groups. She was representative of Sarah Wei.
What is it that she did at the protest to make you suspicious of her?
There were quite a lot of factors involved in this issue. Do you want me to tell you?
How about this, did, withdrawn? Was there anything that the protesters did that indicated to you that they might be planning to expose the protesters to the CCP?
Mr. Horton said, objection to form, Your Honor.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
So the people you were there protesting with. You had concerns that those people were not true movement members, correct?
The person was not a member of us. The person came from outside. He was the one who draws the pictures of the national flags for Gov't.
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor moved to strike as non-responsive.
The court said, the answer is stricken.
Mr. Skirek said, can the court reporter please read back the question?
The record was read.
Yes.
So at the time in your mind you believed it was possible that fellow movement members were a fake, right?
Mr. Horton said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
And in your mind did you believe it was possible that some of those people were CCP spies?
I did not have.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, I apologize for interrupting, but Mr. Gov't cannot hear that interpreter.
The court said, if the interpreter can hold the microphone close so everyone even in the back can hear what you're saying in Mandarin and in English.
The interpreter said, what about now?
The court said, why don't you say something?
The interpreter said, can interpreter ask the witness to repeat her answer?
The court said, is that loud enough?
Ms. Shrofa said, Thank you, Your Honor.
The court said, all right. Yes, you may ask her to repeat her answer.
These two person who were secretly taking the photos had connection with one of the leader. Michelle, of course, they had some connections.
Mr. Skirek said, move to strike as non-responsive, Your Honor.
The court said, you said that you believed that some of the people were fake?
The witness said, I did not mean that.
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, I believe that wasn't the last question that was pending. The question that I asked was about CCP.
The court said, I'm going to strike my own question and the answer that was given.
Mr. Skirek said, Thank you, Your Honor. Perhaps I could pose the question slightly differently. Based on your experience with the protest in LA, were you concerned that some of the protesters you were with were CCP spies?
I did not have suspicious, until the two persons started to taking photos secretly. One was CHUXINZE. The other one was CC.
The interpreter said, the interpreter lost part of the net name.
The court said, if you can ask her to repeat that then.
GPIPI, Gov't knows the person.
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, move to strike the last portion of that answer.
Mr. Horton said, objection.
The court said, I'm going to strike the portion that begins with the word, Gwa.
Mr. Skirek said, Thank you, Your Honor. So it's fair to say that you did have suspicions after you observed what these two individuals did. Right.
Mr. Horton said, objection, asked and answered.
The court said, I'm going to permit the question and the answer. Go ahead.
Yes.
The court said, were those two people part of the protest?
The witness said, no.
The court said, do you believe that they were pretending to be part of the protest?
The witness said, the two-person did not participate in the protest. They came from somewhere else.
The court said, go ahead.
By Mr. Skirek.
But you met these people.
I did at the scene.
I'm sorry.
I did at the scene.
At the scene. Now let's talk about the Texas protest. Did certain behavior at the protest there concern you too?
Yes.
Now, you testified before that you advanced a significant amount of money for the Texas protest, correct?
I did not say I was given a lot of money. They owe me money.
When I say advanced, to be clear, I mean that you paid for things at the Texas protest, correct?
Yes.
And you were not reimbursed by the farm, correct?
No.
You received no money from the farm to repay you, correct?
I didn't.
And you were upset about that, right?
Yes.
And you advanced that money because Sarah Way asked you to, right?
One lay.
Is that Sarah Wei?
Feng Qingping and somebody else. A new name XIAO, FENG, ZHU, another person SUN, WEI. RONG.
Okay. And you understood at the time that you paid for those expenses that Sarah Wei would reimburse you. Right.
The court said, do you mean pay her back?
Mr. Skirik said, thank you, Your Honor, for the suggestion. That Sarah Wei would pay you back.
All the three-person Sarah Wei stated that they would pay me back. They would pay me back several days after the event.
And they didn't do that, right?
Yes.
Now, you stopped investing in any projects with Mr. Guo by the end of 2020, is that correct?
Yes.
And by 2021, you became a critic of many people in the movement, correct?
Yes.
And, in fact, beginning in February of 2021, you posted live streams that were critical of certain people in the movement, correct?
I used the media of GTV, or I would say Gov't TV.
Continued on next page. By Mr. Skirik.
Thank you. Before you live streamed in February of 2021, no one from the movement attacked you for not participating in the movement, correct?
I don't think I understand the question very much.
Okay. Let me try again. By the end of 2020, you stopped participating in movement activities, right?
Yes.
When you stopped participating in movement activities, no one attacked you for not participating. Correct?
We did not have a physical office, we only used all our conveniences. If I did not post my communications online, nobody would see me.
My question is, you weren't criticized for not participating, right?
I'm sorry, I still don't understand. I don't understand. What do you mean by criticize of me?
You testified that by the end of 2020, you stopped participating in movement activities.
The activity was just online. If you don't post online, nobody knows that you were active.
Okay. So no one bothered you when you weren't active, right?
We could not see each other, so who would bother me?
So the answer is no.
I don't know how to answer this question.
Okay.
It's just an online scam. If I did not go online, nobody would approach me.
Fair enough. Now, when you did go online in February of 2021, you accused people of swindling you, correct?
Yes.
You pointed to specific individuals, right?
Yes.
Including Mulan.
Yes.
Including Sarah Wei.
Yes.
And in these live streams, you were critical of the offline people that you had met in person, right?
Yes.
Because you didn't like their behavior, correct?
It was not that I disliked them. I mean, their activity was wrong.
Fair enough. And it was wrong because you felt they tricked you into paying for expenses on the protest trips, right?
Not totally correct.
That was among the reasons, right? That was part of the reason.
Yes.
Okay. And you posted or streamed this criticism many times, right?
From 40 to 41.
Mr. Skirik said, I'm sorry, could the interpreter repeat that? Interpreter SHI phone, from 40 to 41. I'm sorry, what do those numbers refer to?
I used Gov't TV to criticize those offline people, including Mulan and some others. The times were from 40 to 41.
So 40, it was done 40 or 41 times.
Yes, the live stream, 40 to 41.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification. And when you did this, you weren't kicked out of the movement, right?
Yes.
Am I correct that you were not kicked out of the movement? Mr. Skirik said, and if we can ask that the witness say correct or incorrect.
Mr. Horton said, objection.
Mr. Skirik said, I'm not sure how else to do it, Your Honor.
The court said, you may ask her to answer correct or incorrect. You may ask her that.
The previous question is withdrawn. If you can please answer correct or incorrect, after you live streamed 40 or 41 times. You weren't kicked out of the movement, correct?
I was kicked out of Gov't TV.
And when did that happen?
I don't recall exactly. I would say from March 20th to March 21st. Interpreter Lian Wang, Your Honor. Can we interpreter switch?
The court said yes. Interpreter Lian Wang, okay.
Okay. Now, a time came when you reached out to Mr. Gov't directly about the issue of repayment of expenses. Right.
Incorrect.
You never spoke to Mr. Gov't about the reimbursement issue.
I had speak with him regarding the reimbursement. But I had never talked with him about the refund and return the money back.
Mr. Skirik said, I'm sorry, can I just have the interpreter repeat that answer? I didn't catch it all.
The interpreter said, okay. I'll repeat. I had speak with him regarding the reimbursement money. But I had never talked with him about the refund money.
So you don't recall talking to him at all about the refund?
Which exactly refund do you mean?
We discussed before the fact that you were not paid back for the expenses during the protest trips.
Correct.
And do you recall discussing that with Mr. Gov't?
Yes.
Okay. And am I correct that Mr. Gov't identified people in the movement who he believed could help you? Right.
Would you please repeat your question?
Mr. Gov't identified Mulan as someone who could help you with getting paid back, correct?
Yes, of course he knew.
Mr. Skirik said, just one moment, Your Honor.
Counsel conferred.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, may we have a brief sidebar?
The court said yes.
Continued on next page. At sidebar.
Ms. Shrofa said, I apologize, Your Honor. But I was told that the translation of the last question and the last answer was totally inappropriate. There are interpreters sitting in the courtroom. Maybe one of them could verify the translation was correct. I don't know, I don't speak the language, so I have no way to verify if Mr. Govt's concern is correct or not.
The court said, all right. So let's have both of these interpreters step up.
Ms. Shrofa said, sorry about that.
Mr. Finkel said, should we just go back to the other interpreter?
The court said, I want to hear from them.
Interpreter present.
The court said, hi there. What is your name? Interpreter Afonger. The court said, and what have you been doing during this trial? Interpreter SHI Fong. I've been doing simultaneous interpreter for the Southern District Court of New York to provide the simultaneous translation to Mr. Gov't, the defendant. The court said, have you also been listening to the interpreters who have been interpreting for the witness? Interpreter SHI Fong. Yes, I have. The court said, do you consider that the interpreter interpreted the last question and answer correctly? Interpreter SHI Fong. I do not. The court said, can you tell me what you believe was incorrect about the interpretation? Interpreter SHI Fong. Yes. It was incorrect. The court said, I'm asking you why was it incorrect? Interpreter SHI Fong. Because after I talked to my colleague, where's my colleague? So can you get here? I'm sorry. After we, Interpreter Zhuo Huang. Your Honor, to be honest. The court said, actually, I'd like to speak with her first and then you. Actually, I'd like you to step back.
Interpreter Tua Huang not present. Interpreter SHI Fong. The part 1 heard that the first time she translated this question, she didn't translate the word movement. The question, I believe, is Mr. Gov't had identified people from the movement. She just translate that word as a general crowd instead of movement, general population instead of movement. She didn't say the movement. The second time when she translate the question, she translate as, can Mr. Gov't identify people move forward? I believe that's what and that's not what the attorney asked at all.
The court said, okay. Interpreter SHI Fong. And she omit the person Mulan in the attorney's question. I did not hear the word Mulan in her translation. The court said, all righty. Feel step back.
Ms. Shrofa said, so, Your Honor, that is what Mr. Gov't raised to me. He said that the interpreter never said the word Mulan in the question.
The court said, I even noticed that myself.
Mr. Finkel said, so did the government.
The court said, okay, so we're going to have to excuse her. What about the other gentleman? Is he in the room?
Mr. Horton said, He's still here, Your Honor.
Mr. Finkel said, yeah. We can just go back with him. That would be the government's proposal.
The court said, okay.
Mr. Finkel said, he's right there in the back of the courtroom.
Ms. Schrofa said, maybe, Your Honor, may I make a suggestion?
The court said yes.
Ms. Schrofa said, maybe we can just have the interpreters who are sitting and doing the official translation. One of them work as a Czech interpreter. In one of my other cases, the Judge Moss, had a Czech interpreter so that if some interpretation was going wrong, they would alert the court. We can try that. I don't know.
The court said, I am not familiar with that procedure. It's not one that I want to adopt.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor. One question that might be helpful as we consider next steps is how much longer does Mr. Skirik have left?
Mr. Skirik said, it's very difficult to tell, Your Honor. Depends on how quickly we can get through this. With an English speaker, I would have been done probably half an hour ago. But it's just very slow going because of the interpretation.
Mr. Finkel said, the government's view is we've sort of covered a lot of this ground yesterday. That's our view. But, I mean, do you think you have an hour left? 15 minutes?
Mr. Skirik said, Mr. Finkel, I'm not trying to be cute. I can't tell you how long it's going to take because it depends on how difficult the translation issues are.
Ms. Schrofa said, maybe you could go to the interpreter and ask him if he can work without swapping out.
Mr. Finkel said, yeah, that's fine.
The court said yes. Well, I'm going to direct him to do that.
Mr. Finkel said, even better.
The court said, but I do need for us to call the interpreter's office to let this individual know that she will not be interpreting any further. I'm going to direct. Actually, let's have him come up.
Mr. Finkel said, so, Your Honor, with defense counsel here, that interpreter, as is required. Because we are not permitted to use the court interpreters, is someone we ordered. So because that's what the requirement is. But we'll note that we shouldn't use that interpreter in the future. Although I don't think we have any other Mandarin language speakers. We might have one or two, but probably not. We'll see.
Interpreter Lien Wang present.
The court said yes. I'm going to need for you to do the interpreting for the rest of the day by yourself. Interpreter Lien Wang, okay. The court said okay.
Mr. Finkel said, thank you. Interpreter Lien Wang, right now from now?
The court said yes. Excuse me, sir. If you would just let your colleague know that that is what we're going to do. Interpreter Lien Wang, okay. The court said thank you.
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, you may continue.
Mr. Skirik said, can we please have the court reporter read back the last question?
Record read.
The court said, I would like the interpreter to interpret that question, please.
That happened 6 months later. Interpreter Lien Wang, Your Honor, can I ask to speak with you?
The court said yes. Step up, counsel.
Continued on next page. At sidebar, Interpreter Lien Wang. Since the other interpreter has left, I believe she made some mistake in previous 2 or 3 questions when she took over, since she has left.
The court said, is there any application before the court?
Ms. Schrofa said, yes, Your Honor. We would like a break. We need to go back and look at the questions that were posed before and repose them.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, the government would submit Mr. Skirik can just ask those questions again. And the government doesn't object to striking the answers with respect to the interpreter. I think there are just 3 or 4 questions.
The court said, well, I think that we need this gentleman to identify which questions were misinterpreted.
Mr. Finkel said, yes. I think there were about 3 or 4 questions that were posed through that interpreter. And so the government doesn't object to an application, if the defense makes it, to strike those answers and those questions. And we can essentially, Mr. Skirik can go 2 sentences back in his outline.
Ms. Schrofa said, but we need to know the mistakes.
The court said, we don't know which questions and which answers.
Mr. Finkel said, understood.
The court said, so we are going to have to take a break. And he will take a look at the transcript and let us know which questions and which answers were not interpreted properly.
Mr. Finkel said, understood.
In open court.
The court said, members of the jury, we're going to take a pause. Remember that you're not permitted to discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't let anyone discuss the case in your presence. In addition, do not read, listen, or watch anything about the case. I'll call you back as soon as I can.
Jury not present.
The court said, ma'am, you may step out. I'm going to call you back soon. Do not discuss the case.
Witness not present.
The court said, but I would like the interpreter to remain. Would the interpreter step forward, please? And so I would like you, along with the attorneys working along with the court reporter, to go back over the questions and answers that were given during this cross-examination this morning, and to identify where you believe that there were incorrect interpretations. You'll do that with the attorneys. We'll take a break.
Recess.
The court said, please be seated. Have the parties reached an agreement with regard to how to go forward?
Mr. Skirek said, yes. I think we've identified where the mistranslation started, so I know where to go back to. Your Honor, to put the question again to the witness.
The court said, okay. So I won't be hearing objections to the resking of these questions, correct?
Mr. Horton said, that's right, Your Honor.
The court said, all right. Then please have the jurors brought in.
Continued on next page. Jury present.
The court said, you may be seated.
Witness present.
The court said, and you may continue your questions.
Mr. Skirek said, thank you, Your Honor.
The court said, remember that you're still under oath.
The witness said, okay. Bye, Mr. Skirek.
Now. Mr. Guo identified people in the movement for you who could help to get you paid back for the expenses, right?
I don't quite understand someone in the movement.
How about someone?
Counsel conferred.
By movement, I mean someone in the Phoenix farm, right?
I believe the context is wrong. There's no Phoenix.
Did Mr. Guo point you to people he believed could help get you paid back?
He did not point that out. He let me choose whom could pay me back, and he gave me two choices.
Okay. Did one of those people include Mulan?
Chongdao and Mulan. Interpreter Lian Wang, by Chongdao, mean Long Island.
Is that Long Island, David?
Yes, Shaoqi Dong.
Mr. Skirek said, could I just ask the interpreter to please raise the microphone? Interpreter SHI phone, sorry. And is that person also known as Long Island David?
No.
Is that person known by any other name?
Chongdao Ge. In English it means Long Island brother.
Long Island brother, correct. Just to make sure I heard it.
Correct.
And I'm correct, aren't I? That Mr. Guo also asked for the names of other people who needed to be paid back expenses.
In English, no.
Were there other people you were aware of besides you who needed to be paid back expenses?
Yes.
Did you discuss that with Mr. Guo?
I talked to him about it.
And you don't know what he did with that information, right?
I don't know what he did.
And you never asked him to personally pay you back, right?
The witness said, can I answer?
The court said, go ahead.
Mr. Guo told me over the phone that he could use the money in his own pocket to pay me back. I said no. It's not necessary. I also told him there are other people who would need to be paid back. I hope they could be paid back in normal way.
Okay. Now, you testified earlier that by the end of 2020, you believed that GTV was a scam, right?
Yes.
So that was your belief at the time that you spoke to Mr. Guo withdrawn. So that was your belief at the time you communicated with Mr. Guo in February of 2021, right?
Yes.
But you didn't say that to him when you spoke with him, right?
You mean my suspicion?
You didn't tell him your suspicion when you communicated with him in February of 2021, right?
I was afraid of telling him that.
So the answer is yes, correct?
Yes.
You didn't tell him that you were concerned that you might not get your money back, right?
I say that. By the way, whom did I talk to?
I'm sorry. Can I have that answer, interpreter SHI phone? The witness was asking you the question.
Can you slow down? Interpreter SHI phone, she's saying, can you slow down?
Of course. So just to be clear, you didn't express those concerns to him when you spoke to him, right?
I did not say that.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, I'm looking at the time. It may be an appropriate place to stop for the lunch break.
The court said, all righty. So we will take our half-hour break now, members of the jury. You'll return back to the courtroom at noon. Remember that you're not allowed to discuss the case. You're not allowed to read, view, or listen to anything about the case from any source whatsoever.
Jury not present. Continued on next page.
The court said, Please be seated. Is there anything before we start at noon?
Mr. Finkel said, Yes, Your Honor. The witness is here.
The court said, Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You should step out, ma'am. Don't discuss the case.
Witness not present.
The court said, Go ahead.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, I'm reluctant to raise this at all. But the government is being mindful of what Your Honor instructed counsel in your robing room last week. Last night, and this morning we told members of the defense team that our next witness is traveling from Australia, and that our intention is to get her back home on Friday, okay, if not beforehand. We also have another witness, a civilian, who's here from Texas and traveling next week, and we're hopeful to get him on and off the stand by the end of this week. Defense counsel knows this. I talked to one of the members of the defense team this morning. I understand that there are issues with this particular witness and interpreter and technology. They are outside of everyone's control. When Your Honor permitted counsel to review the transcript, I made a suggestion to one of the defense team members as to how to make the process more efficient. And the response that I received was it's almost as if the government has a witness scheduling issue. Somewhat of a sarcastic tone to it. I'm reluctant to even raise this at all, I really am. Because this is the kind of thing that the parties should just deal with and work with each other on. The point, Your Honor, that I'm making is that we believe there is sufficient time for the direct and cross of these two witnesses, and for this witness to be finished such that their travel can be maintained. And so, Your Honor, what I would ask Your Honor to consider, okay, and with the understanding that some of what happened today is outside of the parties' control, but also with the understanding that some of the cross-examination has in other witnesses has been considerably long. I would ask Your Honor to consider if it's okay with the court and okay with the jury, and I mentioned this to one of the defense team members this morning, that perhaps tomorrow and, if necessary, on Friday we sit a little bit longer. And I can also tell the court, again, reluctantly, that the government is behind where it expected to be in terms of the progress of this case. Several days behind, to be completely candid with you. We are juggling our witnesses and scheduling. We have witnesses coming from outside of the country next week, which is presenting serious logistical obstacles. But we are doing our job, and we are managing our witnesses and the jury's time and Your Honor's time as best as we can. And so the application from the government is, 1, to please consider sitting a little bit later tomorrow and Friday, if necessary, and 2, to just be aware of, again, with reluctance, Your Honor, what appears to be some sort of tactic, I don't know how else to say it, and I'm sorry to say it, to delay this witness or other witnesses in light of the travel concerns that we communicated in good faith to the defense.
Mr. Skirik said, Your Honor, first of all, we have no issue whatsoever with the government's application to sit later tomorrow and Friday if the government believes that that's going to ease the travel issues that its witnesses have. We're more than happy to do that to accommodate. And if the government has other suggestions, we're open to those as well. I think, in our view, I'm not sure how anyone who's been watching the cross-examination of this witness could believe anything other than that it is a slog through the mud because of the communication issues and the witness's inability or reluctance to directly answer questions. As Your Honor knows, you've had to strike numerous statements from the record, both yesterday and today, because the witness is non-responsive. That is clearly not the fault of the defense, nor is it the fault of the prosecution. So if what we have here is scheduling delays that are being exacerbated by this particular witness going now, that certainly can't be held against the defense in any way, shape, or form. And clearly there's nothing intentional about it. And frankly, that suggestion, I think, I know from our perspective I think that's off base, to put it mildly. So we're happy to work with the prosecution to accommodate the witnesses. Mr. Finkel did not raise this with me before he raised it with the court, perhaps he raised it with someone else. I'm not sure. But we're happy to try to work out the schedule and accommodate the witnesses' travel.
The court said, so I have handled hundreds of trials, and I've concluded that the cross-examination here, putting aside technical difficulties, putting aside this witness's limitations, the cross-examination has been atypically slow, and I would like you to be more efficient in your cross-examination. I'm going to ask the jurors if they can remain later. Would it help if we also remained later today?
Mr. Finkel said, "Yes, Your Honor."
The court said, all right. I will ask them. Of course, you know, they've planned their lives around the schedule that I set and we'll just see.
Mr. Finkel said, "We understand that, Your Honor." And with respect to Mr. Skirek, I understand what he's saying and I get it. I mean, I understand there's been difficulties with this particular witness. What I was mentioning was a comment that was made when we were checking the transcript, which suggested to me that it was part of some broader effort. But I hope very strongly that we are all past that. And I just want to be completely clear. As I have been to many members of the defense team, as all four of us have been, we want to work efficiently, responsibly, and professionally with the defense to promote an efficient presentation of evidence for the jury to decide. That's the government's goal.
Mr. Skirek said, we obviously share that, Your Honor.
The court said, all right then. So we will restart at noon.
Mr. Finkel said, thank you, Your Honor.
Luncheon recess. Continued on next page. Afternoon session 12 p.m. Jury not present.
The court said, please be seated. Would you have the jurors brought in please before the witness?
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, I don't believe the interpreters are here.
The court said, where are they? You may be seated.
Jury present.
The court said, please be seated. Members of the jury, unfortunately we have fallen behind in our schedule, and I'm trying to figure out a way to catch up. So I'm going to ask whether I can add for today, tomorrow, and Friday an hour to your day. I know you've planned out your schedules, and I know that it's possible that you might not be able to accommodate me on this. One way of doing it could be that we go from 9:30 to noon, take a half an hour, and then go until 3:15. Is that something that you would be able to do?
Juror said, today, tomorrow, and Friday?
The court said, I understand alternate one is not able to do that, not today nor tomorrow or Friday.
Juror said, I have a shoot shortly after court.
The court said, you have an obligation after court?
Juror said, yes.
The court said, okay. What about coming in at 9 a.m.? Would that be something?
Juror said, I could do that.
The court said, how late could you stay?
Juror said, 3. I have a video shoot in the city, so I already have clients lined up for the rest of the week.
The court said, so you're saying starting at 9, and we'd have our break, let us say at 11:30 to 12, and then we could go to 3 p.m.?
Juror said, that works for me if it works for everybody else.
The court said, anybody that cannot do that? So starting tomorrow will start at 9, and you're leaving at 3. But it's for these 3 days. So, thank you, I appreciate your flexibility. Alrighty. Let's have the witness return to the stand. Remember, ma'am, that you're still under oath. You may continue the inquiry.
Mr. Skirek said, thank you, Your Honor.
By Mr. Skirek.
Ms. Lee, do you recall that at one point members of the farm offered to pay you back for the expenses?
Can I talk now?
The court said yes. Go ahead. One moment, if you could just aim your microphone a little bit more to your left. Both of you, because of the feedback. Go ahead.
First, Wei Li Hong, Weilihong. Second, Sun, Weirong. Third, Wei Lei, Weilei. Fourth, Wen Yang, Wenyang. Fifth, Sherry. Sixth, and Hong, Anhong. Seventh, Guoxiaotian, Guoxiaotian. Eighth, Mulan, Mulan. Last one, Taiwan Daniu, Daniu.
Did time come when you declined to let withdrawn? Did a time come when you declined to allow them to pay you back?
Yes.
In fact, you declined because you wanted to stay involved until, according to you, the U.S. government could help recover the money, right?
It's not correct.
Do you recall telling Mr. Horton that when you met with him in March of this year?
I said because they wanted me to sign an agreement and I did not want to do that.
My question was, do you recall telling Mr. Horton when you met with him in March of this year that you declined because you wanted to stay involved so the U.S. government could help you get your money back?
I did not say I was expecting U.S. government to pay me back. I was saying I wanted to get the money back through the U.S. government. I said I did not want to take the money from the hands of scammers.
So you declined, correct?
I declined because he wanted me to sign an agreement.
And that was in 2021, right?
2021.
Now, let's talk about your H-Coin investment. You invested $5,700 in H-Coin, right?
Which entity?
You testified yesterday that you purchased H-Coin, right?
Yes.
And that was for $5,700, right?
Yes.
And that was in July of 2021, right?
No.
When was it?
June.
So by June of 2021, you believed that any investment offered by Mr. Guo was a scam, right?
Yes.
So at the time you bought H-Coin, you didn't expect to make any profit on it, right?
Yes.
And you assumed you would lose the money, right?
No.
You thought you were going to get the money back.
2 weeks after that I asked the receiver of the money to return the money.
Understood. That wasn't my question. My question was, before you purchased the H-Coin, you assumed you wouldn't get that money back, right, since it was a scam.
I was coerced into purchasing that.
But you didn't lose money, right?
Correct, I lost $60.
On a transaction fee, ma'am.
Yes.
And you asked for a refund.
Yes.
And you got it, right?
Yes.
And Miles Guo didn't attack you for asking for a refund, right?
The interpreter said, "Can the interpreter have the question again?"
Miles Guo didn't attack you for asking for a refund, did he?
I did not send the money to Miles Guo. I sent to somebody else in the farm.
Right. But your testimony, right, is that Miles Guo is behind all of this, right?
Yes.
And he didn't criticize you after you asked for a refund, right?
I barred him from my social media.
Are you aware that Miles Guo criticized you for asking for H-Coin refund?
I never saw him.
Is the answer no, ma'am?
Mr. Horton said, "Objection, Your Honor. We've been through this."
The court said, "Are you asking me to strike the answer? What is the request?"
Mr. Skirik said, "I would move to strike that answer as non-responsive."
Mr. Horton said, "There's a pending objection to the question as asked and answered."
Mr. Skirik said, "The previous answer was not responsive."
The court said, "The previous answer was not responsive, so I'm going to strike that, as well as the recent answer which is non-responsive. Please read back the question. I'm asking the reporter."
Record was read.
Can I have the last question again?
Mr. Skirik said, "Your Honor, may I ask, before you translate, sir? Can we just ensure that the instruction from the court is also being translated?" I'll just ask the court to make sure the instruction from you is also being interpreted back to the witness.
The interpreter said, interpreter did.
The court said, okay.
I don't know that.
Thank you. I'd like to talk about G clubs just for a moment. You testified on direct that you bought a $20,000 club's membership, right?
Which entity?
G clubs.
Yes.
Now, you testified on direct that you didn't get anything for your G club's membership, right?
I don't think I understand the question.
Did you testify that you didn't get anything for the money that you spent on G clubs?
Yes.
You understood before you bought it that it offered a discount on certain items, right?
What do you mean by discount?
It allowed you to pay less than some other people.
Yes. The member for G Club was from 10 to 50,000.
Okay. How much of a discount?
10% of 10,000, 20% on 20,000, 30% on 30,000, 40% on 40,000 and 50% on 50,000.
And you purchased the $20,000 membership giving you a 20% discount, right?
The interpreter said, Your Honor, interpreter need to verify some details.
When you purchase the membership of the G Club, you can get some discount when you purchase from G Fashion. The discount applied on that operation.
Did you ever try to use that discount?
Never.
Am I right that one of the benefits of G Clubs was that it allowed members to live stream on GTV?
No.
Could anyone live stream on GTV?
I believe there was some misunderstanding in your question. Can I still answer your question?
Sure. One of the benefits of G Clubs was that it gave you a certain amount of hours to live stream on GTV, right?
Everyone can get online of GTV. As GTV member, you can apply your card to live stream for 2 hours.
And that card was a G Clubs card, right?
There's only a name. There's no physical card at all.
Ma'am, you raised the idea of a card, right?
Each of us had a number. It's indicated as G Club card.
Understood. And it was that number that gave you the ability to live stream on GTV, right?
This counsel does not understand the G Clubs.
Mr. Skirek said, move to strike as non-responsive, Your Honor.
The court said, the answer is stricken.
Ms. Lee, without your membership to G Club, you couldn't have live stream on GTV, right?
I want to talk to the judge.
The court said, ma'am, the way that it works is that the lawyer asks the questions and you must give the answers.
The witness said, okay, but I don't think I get the point of his question.
The court said, can you rephrase the question?
You testified that you had a G Club's number, right?
Yes.
And in order to do live streams on GTV, you had to use that G Club's number, right?
Still not correct. You did not ask the question right.
Mr. Skirek said, move to strike as non-responsive, Your Honor.
The court said, the answer is stricken. Ma'am, did you receive certain benefits as a member of G Clubs?
The witness said, no.
The only way you could live stream on GTV was using your G Club's ID, right?
I was able to do live stream for 2 hours.
As a G Club's member?
Yes.
Thank you. And you used that 2 hours of live stream, right?
I could use 2 hours from 40 to 41 days.
As you testified before, you did use those.
I would not say it was used.
You live streamed, didn't you, ma'am? You testified to that earlier today.
I got online every day, but I don't think you were right in a way answering these questions. Can you ask the question in a different way?
I think I've asked the question multiple different ways. My question now is, you testified earlier today that you live streamed on GTV, right?
Mr. Horton said, objection, Your Honor. This question has been asked and answered several times.
The court said, I will allow her to answer this question.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, you testified that you purchased your G Club's membership on November 9th of 2020, right?
I don't recall the exact date. It's sometime like that.
Let's pull up what's in evidence as Government Exhibit VH9. Ms. Lee. Do you see the document in front of you?
Let me take a look at it. Yes, I saw it before.
And you can see that this shows that the membership was purchased in November of 2020, right?
Yes.
And do you recall seeing the G Clubs withdrawn? Do you recall seeing Mr. Gw's video announcing the launch of G Clubs?
Yes, I saw it.
Okay. And can we please just briefly pull up Government Exhibit C-148, V1 in evidence? Ma'am. While we're doing that, did you watch the video when it first came out?
I was in Texas. The time was October when I saw Mr. Gw's video about the G Clubs.
Can we please briefly play the clip? And I ask the witness to identify this as the video that she's referring to.
Media played.
Ma'am, did you recognize that audio recording as being from the launch of G Clubs?
Yes, I do.
Now, you testified yesterday that you took out a mortgage on your house so that you could invest in GTV. Right.
Yes.
And you first learned as you testified to yesterday about GTV in April of 2020, correct?
I did not get the question clearly. Can you give me the date again?
You testified that you first learned about the GTV investment opportunity in April of 2020.
Yes.
Now, ma'am, isn't it true that you took out the mortgage on your home in February of 2020?
Yes.
So you didn't even know about the GTV investment opportunity when you took out the mortgage on your home. Right.
After the Lunar New Year of 2020, Gwa had been promoting the G Club, the GTV, claiming that was a new media.
Mr. Skirek said, move to strike as non-responsive, Your Honor.
The court said, the answer is stricken.
Mr. Horton said, objection.
Ma'am, when you testified that you took out a mortgage in order to buy GTV, you were lying, weren't you?
Everything I say was true. Gwa had been saying that he would set up a GTV from some other people.
You told us before, yesterday and again today. And then again about 30 seconds ago that the first time you heard about the GTV investment opportunity was in April of 2020. Right.
Not correct. You interpreted it wrong.
Mr. Skirek said, Your Honor, may we have a brief sidebar?
The court said yes.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, I apologize, but I think the translator is mixing up GTV and G Clubs. In the questions that he is translating, he's not translating GTV as GTV and G Club as G Club. Mr. Skirek may want to move on anyway, but I think there is a jumble. It's not a translation jumble. I think the translator is just not appreciating the distinction between G Club and GTV.
The court said, why is it that you think that?
Ms. Shrofa said, because I can hear GTV and G Club. That much I can understand, and I think I'm right.
Mr. Finkel said, this is a rare thing to say, but I agree, Your Honor. And so maybe Mr. Skirek can clarify for the interpreter. My question is about G Club. And then ask the question of the interpreter.
Mr. Skirek said, maybe we can bring the interpreter over to make that point.
Ms. Shrofa said, may I just confer with him? May I confer with my colleague?
The court said yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, eventually they all agree with me, Your.
Mr. Finkel said, let's not go that far. Please write that honor down.
Pause.
Ms. Shrofa said, Your Honor, it might make sense for us to just tell the translator that G Clubs, GTV, investment and private placement investment are all 4 different phrases, and he should be mindful of those. Or we can just hope he will be mindful and leave it up to whoever was.
Mr. Finkel said, there's a difference between G Club and GTV, and I think that should be pointed out for the translator. Investment, private placement. That might be different in her mind, because I think Ms. Lee thinks it's all one investment for Mr. Gwa.
Ms. Shrofa said, what he's translating, I just want him to translate the words accurately. I'm not suggesting the answer.
The court said, I'm going to ask him to come over. I just wanted to point out that G Club is one entity. GTV is a different entity. And so if you'll be careful to make sure that you're accurately.
The interpreter said, okay. GTV. G Club. Okay.
Mr. Finkel said, how much more does defense counsel have?
Mr. Skirrick said, very little.
Court said, oh good.
Continued on next page. In open court.
Mr. Skirrick said, no further questions.
The court said, okay. Redirect?
Mr. Horton said, no further questions, Your Honor.
The court said, thank you very much. You may step down.
Witness excused.